Allen Stiles on Sactown Sports.
A little bit of housekeeping here. Brenden Nunes, Chris Watkins joining us. Very excited to have them in the building. A little bit of housekeeping. Want to catch Joe from the 530 before he might have to do something else. Joe says, Allen, if I'm able to get tickets to a River Cats game, where are you in the park so I can stop by and say what's up? You'll see me, Joe.
Everywhere.
Yeah, you'll see me. Don't you worry about that. Come on down. Today, Saturday, and Sunday, we'll be in the building. A little bit more housekeeping. Guys, I don't know if you saw this from Mark Haynes. Looks like the presser for Scott Perry is tentatively set for Tuesday. So I saw that come through. I would assume, as most things happen, around the same time as this show. So we will have that for you, or we will do our best to have that for you. And let's start there. What the hell is going on?
With what? I mean, this all went downhill when they fired Mike Brown. I feel like we outlined that pretty well. And honestly, I'm not the most surprised at how everything has played out since that point.
I do wonder if there's anybody out there, because there are a lot of people, whether, we know how social media gets down, but also listeners that thought that it was the right decision. And I do wonder now that the season has ended and how the season ended, if they still feel like that was the right decision, simply because of everything that it led to. Because there are a lot of people that, hey, Mike Brown wasn't, if Mike Brown gets hot, some people cannot be the right fit and work out.
A good coach.
If Mike Brown gets hired for the Suns, right, that doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't the wrong decision. Mm-hmm. So I would separate those things, but it kind of feels like it was the wrong decision based on everything that it led to.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like Brenden said, I mean, I feel like we've, specifically, I'll plug the Return of the Roar podcast. Like, I feel like we've been just screaming this literally since the day Mike Brown got fired, that it at the time didn't make any sense. And I think, frankly, I was a bit surprised at the amount of people. And, I get it. Like, some people just have the mentality of, you don't know, you can't see the future, so let everything play out, and then we can actually determine it. But I just think, we were around the team so much, it was very clear and obvious that it was not any of Mike Brown's doing, that the team wasn't successful at that time. Like, he was preaching all of the right things. He was very consistent with his messaging. I think, that might have gotten lost with some of the players. Like, he might have not been as direct as what some players would have wanted in terms of their roles and things like that. And, we definitely used to chronicle all the time, like the fluctuation of, hey, who's getting the call up today? Mike Brown searching for people at the end of his bench. I'm sure that was really frustrating, but he was always clamoring about defense. He would specifically tell us the things that he was hoping his team would do. Stop middle drives, close out and make sure you're hitting guys' hands. Yeah. And we saw the team actually progress in those areas, but we also would really notice when they wouldn't do those things. And I think it was really clear that kind of what you're outlining. Like, I think he had the right messaging, but for whatever reason, maybe it was the wrong club or the wrong group of guys. They just didn't want to hear it. And I frankly blame that more on the players than the coach. Like, I think the messaging was right. It's just the people who were receiving the message didn't want to hear it at the time. And that's why I think we kind of were really hard on guys who were very vocal about Mike Brown, wanting Mike Brown out, because to us, I think, and not to speak for Brenden and Frankie, but I think it spoke more to what the priorities of those players were and what they felt like was the right thing to do. Clearly was more of, this guy's pushing us too hard. He's yelling at us too much. He expects too much out of us. He wants us to practice all of the time, and we're professionals. We don't want to practice all the time. We want to have days off. I just think that all of those things are, sorry, but you're not hearing championship teams talk about, we really practiced. We won a championship. I think we could have practiced less, though. Nobody's complaining about those kind of things on the best teams in the league. And I think that's really why in the moment we were able to kind of say, this is going to ruin everything. And it really did.
Well,
it's not.
And I was just going to lay it back up to you, Brenden. The other thing is, too, I would say that even if you get through, and I know it's a different situation with Taylor Jenkins and Mike Malone. There was other stuff going on, but I don't even necessarily oppose the firing. It's just, off a 5-game losing streak in December is crazy. You want to fire him at the end of the year? Because all it really told us is that you never wanted to extend him.
They were looking for the quickest excuse.
Exactly.
Right.
And a 5-game losing streak, which Doug Christie had 2 4-game losing, I think maybe even 3, but at least 2 4-game losing streaks. It was just crazy business, even if you want to move on. Go ahead, Brenden.
I think it's overreacting to non-linear growth. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's never how this works. Like Mike Brown constantly talked about how it's a lot easier to go from bad to good than from good to great.
Right.
And they did the first step in the process. And I felt like everybody got so caught up, probably honestly, including ownership, in, hey, we were just the 3 seed.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The Denver Nuggets are coming out, Michael Porter Jr. specifically, and being like, hey, that year that we won, same year the Kings were the 3 seed.
Yeah.
The West kind of was not as strong
As
it is right now. You won 2 less games the year after that. Is that really regression?
No.
You're probably about staying even. And guess what? You had the same roster.
Yeah.
What improvement do you expect? And then the following year, it was, again, yes, they clearly did not really were like committed to bringing him back with how much they hesitated in doing so. And no, it's not that Mike Brown was a perfect coach. He had his flaws. While the Keon thing, part of that, I think, was above him, and he was getting other people in his ear talking about how much he may or may not be able to play Keon, and he had his own questions about Keon maybe being a little bit too risky on defense or some of the offensive limitations. So it goes both ways, but same as like this Athletic article that just came out where Monte's like, hey, I never really wanted to fire Mike Brown. I never wanted to trade for for Zach LaVine. I never wanted to sign DeMar DeRozan. And it's so hard to gauge who's responsible for what in all of this.
Yeah.
And honestly, it keeps coming back to the fact that they were not the ones making some of these decisions. And sometimes the ownership is the one that's essentially making this stuff. And so the split locker room, sure, you can blame it on Mike Brown to an extent, but it seemed like at that point, and I think that we discussed this a lot, it was you're either going to choose Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox, or essentially, and I'm putting it very basically, you're going to choose Domantas Sabonis and Doug Christie. And I personally think they chose the wrong one.
And also, I would just add to that as well, just to kind of wrap up the Mike Brown part of it. Like, it gets mentioned all the time, but like for day one, the vertical and horizontal alignment, like it's very clear that there was no vertical and horizontal alignment at any point. Again, like the vertical part of it, like Monte McNair and Mike Brown were clearly not on the same page, right? Like Allen, you and I used to joke all the time about JTA. Like the second JTA gets in the building, Mike Brown is finishing games with Juan Toscano Anderson. It's very clear that that would have been somebody that they prioritize, and yet he gets 2 10-day contracts, and then the rest of the signings, it feels like throughout Mike Brown's tenure, are not Mike Brown guys at all. And now we have to question like what guys are even Monte McNair guys, and so it's just again speaking to the vertical alignment, but then the horizontal alignment is obviously Mike Brown and his players weren't on the same page either, and so. A little prophetic in that way, but it is Mike Brown laid it out day one that he was here, what it would require to reach the levels that they want to reach. And ironically enough, like they didn't listen to that, and it caused, you could say, the death of the Beam Team if you want.
And one of the years, the year that Mike Brown won in JTA at training camp, the guys that were at training camp, one can go unnamed, but there's also Mason Jones and there's Jeremy Lamb as part of that group. And so, take that for how you will.
Jalen Noel as well.
Jalen Noel and
was also a name.
Yeah, one that will go unnamed.
Well, the other thing is too, just looking at some of the decisions that were made at those times, I think the question becomes whether or not, and we've been having a discussion, what was Monte's biggest mistake? And I've just told everyone, for the sake of the drill, let's just assume Monte made the decisions, because now it turns into, well, did he want to? Is that a mistake?
Yeah, it's an impossible conversation.
So I've just said it's the guards, right? All the 6'2" guards that have been running around. But as far as them moving forward, do you think moving off of Mike Brown looks worse if they don't even move forward with Doug Christie, or does it not matter at this point?
I don't think it really matters. The Doug Christie thing concerns me because of the lack of experience and the way that it all happened, right? It very much feels like he was in the org's back pocket, that Mike Brown never wanted him on the coaching staff. And that's nothing to do with Doug as a person. That's just not how Mike Brown wanted to build his staff. But he was told, hey, listen, this guy's going to be there. And then the second he gets fired, which again, seems like they didn't really want him there in the first place, that this was the plan all along, essentially. And that is just a very shady way to go about all this, to be blunt. This has nothing to do with Doug as a person or how he may perform as a coach. You cannot question that Doug Christie wants to do well in this role for himself, for the city more than anything. And so you can't question like his passion and his desire. It's just the experience to me. And I think that there are clearly better routes. So I don't really know how to answer that, to be honest. I think that, I guess from my perspective, I think that there are better coaching options than Doug Christie.
Yeah, I mean, I would really agree with all the positives that you said for sure. And just to kind of throw on top of, I also agree with that last thing you said. I think you can definitely kind of much like Scott Perry, like not saying, and it's not saying for both of these guys, Scott Perry and Doug, that they won't do a great job
right.
or, maybe even the best job possible. But it's just, it feels like the lack of searching is just a flawed process. And, there's no reason why you shouldn't get, I heard Dave say it the other day, and I think it's a fantastic point. Like, you get free advice, right? Like if you did the GM search, you could have just asked all the best basketball minds in the world, what would you do with my situation? And you don't have to hire that person, but it's maybe sparks something in you, though maybe we don't want that getting, random ideas sparked in him. But, I think it's just a missed opportunity to hear as many perspectives on your team as possible. And it's really just a missed opportunity. And I do, in a weird way, kind of think that Doug's biggest strength is also my biggest concern is that I don't, he's great at making relationships. He clearly is has a personal relationship with DeMar and Domas, but I wonder how much of that, he has a connection with this current squad. Like, he worked out during summer with Domas and DeMar DeRozan and things like that. Is he going to be able to create that same level of connection as the head coach when he's not going out there in the summer, personally working with these guys, living with these guys, when you kind of have to have a little bit more of a bird's eye view on things and you can't be boots on the ground? Like, how does that, and Doug is like an all-time relationships kind of guy, but I just wonder if it just won't be the same. And if he just kind of had a really good grasp on this group, and maybe that doesn't translate when you throw in 6 new players next season.
Kings Roundtable, more like a triangle. Brenden, Nunes, Chris, Watkins. When we return, Brenden brought up that maybe Keon not playing wasn't because of Mike Brown, but why would that happen? Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports. Chris Watkins, Brenden, Nunes, no Frank Carticelli today. He's too busy for us because he's the first person to have a child. And hopefully we see him next week.
That's crazy.
What?
The disrespect.
What?
He's the hardest working guy here.
He is the hardest working guy
the
here.
Third most disrespectful thing Allen said today.
I'm on a roll.
I do believe he's actually in a meeting with HR.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
you're probably getting talked about right now.
Well, that's just lovely. On a phone-in Friday, not phone-it-in Friday, and we are going to keep this whole thing going. Brenden, I wanted to expand on what you said when you alluded to Keon Ellis and maybe Mike Brown, because that was, we go on social media and that's immediately, he was in the doghouse. We had questions about the doghouse. Mike Brown had conversations with media about, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Now the question is, did he have to have those conversations? If we go down the rabbit hole of Mike Brown not having full control of the lineup, which is a crazy rabbit hole to go down, what would be the thought process? He's taking playing time away from someone, and if that is the answer, who is that someone? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's a little bit of an interesting thing to kind of dance around, to be honest. But I've had multiple people within the walls of the organization say that, the how much Mike was playing Keon was not solely his decision. Now, to be, again, this goes both ways, right? It is also partially on Mike. Like, Mike clearly outlined to a handful of us that, he felt like he gambled a little bit too much on defense, and that maybe the defense was a little overrated because of that at times, right? And Mike Brown is also very much hey, I'm going to hold the young guys accountable to a fault at times, obviously, very much like everybody that we see in this Popovich tree, to be honest. But it's the same way, like I just said with the Monte thing, where it's extremely hard to try to figure out how much was actually fully his decision. I think that Kevin Huerter had some fans within the organization, more so than it seemed like maybe Keon did. And with Doug being in their back pocket the whole time and them not really wanting to commit to Mike, this is more so me connecting dots. It's like, all right, well then now all of a sudden Doug is playing him. You can't help but wonder, okay, were they holding that card in their back pocket for when they eventually did make this move? Because they see how the fan base feels about all of this.
Makes him look like a hero a little bit.
It's just unfortunate, to be honest. I think my main thing would be that we even have to question all of this stuff.
It is nuts.
And again, I'm not just connecting dots. Like, I've had plenty of conversations about this stuff throughout the course of the year. And again, many people have told me that it is not fully Mike Brown's decision for the limited Keon Ellis minutes.
As far as some of these decisions, and to take it out of the Kings scope just for a second, and because everyone is dumping on the Kings, and I get that. We've seen podcasts, Chris, where, this goes beyond just the NBA, where there's a dude on the bench that's getting paid peanuts. There's a dude playing that isn't getting paid peanuts, and that organization kind of wants you to play the guy that they're paying.
Yeah.
So the Kevin Huerter thing, I can believe, not necessarily because the Kings are a mess. Well, in part, yes, but also that is a well-known thing. If you are, especially for a team that ain't in the luxury tax,
a lot of politics,
clearly care about how much money is being spent, and it comes down to, hey, well, we're paying Kevin Huerter 16, 17 mil. We really like Keon, but that's, like we said, a kind of a back pocket thing. I don't want Keon playing 30 minutes. Let's see if we can get our money's worth out of Kevin Huerter.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Brenden just kind of said there. It's the basketball politics of it all. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that isn't as black and white as hey, this guy's playing well and that guy isn't. Like you said, like sometimes pay comes involved. Right. Sometimes it's what Brendan's outlining, where it's people within the organization have some say and play some favoritism. And there's a lot of reasons why things go bad, and it's not just here, that's what really happened in Denver as well, is there was a basketball politics of the GM really liked his young guys of Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Julian Strother, and Mike Malone really liked to play Russell Westbrook. Yeah. And so, there's a bit of that goes on here. I think, I feel like I told everybody by the end of the season, like I was willing to see or ready to see what the basketball politics was going to shake out with Zach LaVine. I think he's really the basketball politics figurehead right now, because the Kings are in a situation where they're going to be paying him $45+ million a year. And I asked everybody, like, in these play-in or elimination gotta have it games, I was really curious to see, you have 5 spots, and Keon, Malik obviously was hurt, but like Keon, Malik, DeRozan, and LaVine were really fighting for 3 spots, because we knew Keegan and Sabonis were going to be out there. And to see, look, I think everybody probably would have said that we want to see Keon out there, but the reality of the politics are, I don't know if he has a political favor over a Malik Monk, over a DeMar DeRozan, or over, again, a $45 million Zach LaVine. And so, it's still, I think, very, very alive and well here in Sacramento as the basketball politics.
Domantas Sabonis, is he a winning player? How do we define a winning player? The guys define it on the other side. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.
Your home for Kings talk and so much more.
Live and local.
Allen Stiles on Sactown Sports.
Really, guys, we haven't talked NFL in a very long time, but from Jimmy Garoppolo to even Brock Purdy, I'll throw Jimmy out of it, but the Brock Purdys of the world and some of these quarterbacks that we can't really break down exactly what their worth is, as Brock is about to get paid, and here with Chris Watkins and Brenden Nunes, no Frankie Cardicelli, but we're still rocking the round table. Domantas Sabonis is, I feel like, similar to that, in that really good numbers, translates to regular season production and maybe winning, but the postseason comes, and what did he have? It was 13 points and 8. He was a minus 20. He was a game worst.
He had 11 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 turnovers.
And I get it.
It was 5 and 6 until the third quarter.
And I get it. The Mavericks had a bunch of trees out there, but Chris, I don't know, man. do you look at Domantas Sabonis any differently? The Zubats thing where he's getting paid like $58 million, and you look at Domantas Sabonis' contract and you think, man, that's a lot of money. How are you looking at Domantas Sabonis right now?
I would also like to say that I thought when you brought up NFL, I just assumed you were going to bring up Genty, who's 5'8", dunking. Did you not see that video of Jonty dunking? My God.
Well, he's a future Raider.
Yeah, I mean, I just assumed that's what you were going to bring up.
Why is that?
Because you're obsessed with height.
No, I'm not.
Yes,
Don't say that on the air.
It's
All
true.
right. Let's answer the question.
Can't confirm.
It's not.
The question is, where am I at with Domantas Sabonis right now? I will say I will not fault anyone for, as Allen would say, coming down his road. I understand why people would be frustrated with his play and performance, but I just didn't really specifically, I didn't really feel like that game was going to be a part of the definition of Sabonis's postseason play. I think of it more in a series. I don't know. I think one game eliminations can be, a very specific game.
Do you think he's overpaid?
Yes. Yeah, relatively for sure. But yeah, I think it's kind of what Brenden was trying to outline the other day of there's just, you could argue Jonas Valanciunas is a better value than Domantas Sabonis is. Not he's a better player, but there's more, you can just do more with the available money that you have if you don't spend it, that kind of money on that position for that kind of player. That's just how I feel about his performance in the specific elimination game. But in general, I feel he should probably be relegated to a third scoring option. More so in terms of total points per game, not necessarily he isn't getting touches. And that's really the thing that stuck out to me the most about Zach LaVine's exit interview yesterday is when he was kind of talking about him and Sabonis and them only playing 10 games, I think it was together. He mentioned that Sabonis is used to having the ball in his hands. And I think, frankly, that's a problem when the other guys who are now the other best players on the team, and Malik Monk and DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, all of those guys like to have the ball in their hands and are, you could argue, most comfortable when they are in the pick and roll. And Domas's game is very clearly based off of handoffs. Mike Brown catered an entire offense to just weaponizing Domas's handoffs. And that means that Sabonis obviously has to have the ball in his hands. I just don't know. And kind of, again, it kind of circles back to the Monte McNair or the GM conversation, the roster construction of all of this. I think that there's a more optimized version of Sabonis, which I think we've seen in the past. I just don't know if that's where this team's future is lying with the players that they have. And, I don't think it's something that can't work, but I do think if you're going to rely on Sabonis that much offensively, then it is a little, and we saw it with the handoffs, it's just a little bit too much do or die, live and die by people's shooting numbers. So, I just kind of feel like, it'd be best if they looked for better options if they can. And, I wouldn't be opposed to moving off of him because he makes so much money.
Yeah, I would say it's about the opportunity cost. I don't think that individual performance necessarily really changed anything for me. I think that Domas is a very unique player that has great skills. He's just a unique player in the aspect that you also have to build around his skill set. And I don't know that Zach LaVine plays into that. It certainly didn't look like it, but like Chris pointed out, they played 10 games. That's still very, very TBD. That could get better, but you're asking both of those guys to go a little bit outside of their comfort when it comes to how they're going to mesh DHO game, who's going to have the ball, like Chris just kind of laid out there. But, what bigs, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, Joel, when healthy, no question asked, max players, right? After that, Karl Anthony Towns, I think that was a very questionable roster construction when it was over in Minnesota. Yeah, and New York was like, okay, well, that's our final piece. We already got everything else, right? Bam Adebayo. I think Miami's kind of in a tough spot with how much they are paying him. Yeah. And they don't have the guard or wing talent on that roster. Right. Now, they have their own things that they're figuring out for sure. Yeah, shout out Davion. But there's just not that many top tier bigs that I honestly think are deserving of max money or close to it. You're seeing Evan Mobley now become part of that conversation. He's in Defensive Player of the Year discussions, and they already have their other dynamic guards around him. I personally would rather be paying. You find an example here, like Isaiah Hartenstein is making $29 million. I think that's still a bit much. Right. Don't get me wrong, but
you're saying per year?
This is an annual average. Gotcha. The numbers that I'm looking at here, right? And that one may be a bit extreme. Nick Claxton making $24 million a year.
What about Jonas Valanciunas as a starter? Too low.
I still would. I think it's fine. I just want defense from a starting center. Like, that is the most important defensive position on the floor.
Rebounding,
yeah. And like, you don't need, it's not that you can't benefit from having offensive creation at your center, but there are other positions on the floor that I think are more naturally catered towards that when you need the defense from your 5-man, unless you're going to find one of these unicorns that is a rim protector at the 4, like a Jaren Jackson or a Chet Holmgren that Chris and I were huge fans of at the time of that draft. Like, it just makes for such a tough roster construction in my mind.
Yeah, I feel like the tough thing is how you guys are kind of laying this out. As it's set up right now, Domantas Sabonis needs the ball a lot, right? Yeah. If you take the ball out of his hands and say, hey, we're going to relegate you to that third option, now he's grossly overpaid. It's one of the two.
He already is grossly overpaid.
Yes, you could say that too. I'm curious what you guys think, looking back at the Beam team to who they're with now. What's funny is we spent so much time on, wow, Domas went to LA to work with DeMar DeRozan. Guys, off the top of my head, I can't think of one time, and obviously not one time, but I don't remember them working together actually in games.
No, yeah, 100%.
All that work down south and just came up, and there was no synergy between those two.
I mean, best synergy we saw was still with De'Aaron, right? And maybe Malik.
Yeah,
I guess probably more so Malik than De'Aaron,
right?
But it went away when Malik became the primary point guard.
That was a thing to take away.
And that's what leads me to, if they decide to hold on to Domantas Sabonis because they're keeping Doug Christie, and that's going to be our one shining star. What exactly is it in your estimation that Domantas Sabonis needs, or what type of players to be successful?
I would also say, as I was thinking about if we're doing NBA, NFL compare, like centers to me, the way Brenden really laid it out there, like they almost are like running backs, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, if you're not paying Saquon and you're not paying Bijan Robinson or whatever, there's really not much difference in having Elijah Mitchell and, Mostert as your running backs, like you might as well just go running back by committee at that point. And there's an argument that it's a lot better to have Valanciunas and
Quentin
Mason
Post.
Plumlee or whatever. Yeah. Quentin Post. And
come on now.
I think that's unfortunately the correct answer. But to answer your question, I think you have to have shooters around Sabonis, right? Like, I think that's definitely a requirement because, he's expanding his game a bit, but I think you still kind of have to have floor spacers out there if your center is not going to be like a knockdown shooter. And then, he said it, like, you need a point guard. Like, you need somebody. The reason why Domantas Sabonis, the center, like, wasn't optimized is because center point guard pick and rolls are like main ball handler pick and rolls are how a lot of NBA teams play today. And, if you take away Malik and Domas's pocket pass, like, there's not much being created for him. And if he's not getting points created for him and the Kings aren't posting up at the levels of, of Nikola Jokic and if it's a Zubac and things like that, then how is he getting his offense? Because we know Sabonis isn't, breaking people down off the dribble or anything like that. Like he's got to kind of have somebody create his offense for him. And so I think really just a playmaking point guard would do Sabonis a lot of easier work, because right now it's really tough to see him try and create for himself. Like, that's how you get him going 5 of 13 or whatever. And he tries to do his Euro step, but is just going for strength. And, it can be really tough to watch sometimes.
It's about the opportunity cost, right? I don't want it to come off like we think Domas is a bad player. I think that we're all on the same page. Domas is a very good basketball player.
This guy, the financial advisor.
I'm just saying,
opportunity cost.
Well, that's what it is, right? It's how much
season,
it is, but it's how much you're spending $40 to $50 million on a big that can't create for himself and also is a average at best defender. Like,
but he rebounds.
He does. Like he does other things. I'm just saying it. I struggle. Find me a team that is successful that is spending $40 million on a player that does not create for themselves and is not an elite defender.
I can find one, and that would be a bet. Well, it would be. Well, I guess Zach LaVine can't create for himself, but both of them would be on the same team. That'd be crazy. What's funny is if you did drop. Here's the problem with Domantas Sabonis. If you drop them down to $30 million, you would say he's probably slightly underpaid for the regular season, right? But it would be properly paid for the postseason.
Well, honestly, I think postseason should be what we're talking about. Like,
agreed.
I don't care about signing a guy for a regular season. At least not a $30 million guy for a regular season. Signing an MLE guy to help you with your regular season record, sure.
And Jay Crowder, RIP to his playoff record.
It's true. You see his emoji tweet? Yeah. I was sad. There was a lack of all caps in that as well.
Shaking my head.
Yeah.
One more segment with the guys. We discuss whether there is hope for the Sacramento Kings and their thoughts on the reports about DeMar DeRozan seeking clarity. We're all seeking clarity. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports. One more segment with the guys, taking you up to 2 p.m. We'll get back to our phone in Friday in about 15 minutes. Some great calls that we've had so far. And we were talking about Domantas Sabonis, Scott Perry. It looks like that presser will be on Tuesday, so we will be covering that for all of you 1140 listeners out there. We've talked about kind of the past, and now we look towards the future. Jason Anderson put out that piece on the Sacramento Bee guys, and there were some notes about media day and or the end of the season and the media sessions, and DeMar DeRozan wants to seek some clarity too. Is this the most obvious? Is there a word? Let me ask it like this. Is there a word where he's on the team next season?
DeMar
DeRozan.
Oh, sure. There's a world. It's encouraging to hear him talk about how I was talking to Chris about this the other day off air that it's encouraging to hear him say that he wants to work with Keegan Murray this offseason.
Well, Keegan said there's a whole group of them going down to LA.
Great. But as Chris pointed out, it's kind of DeMar's thing. He did this with Dalen Terry. He leans into helping the younger guys.
Yes.
So I don't know how much stock to put into like what that means with his future in Sacramento. DeMar strikes me as a guy that would do that no matter.
Yeah, he's just a hooper. He just wants to help out, mentor,
spread the game. Expand what he's helped create, I guess. I would say I think it's very unlikely. Hearing him in that press conference just really sort of it settling in like, all right, that was the end of my 16th, 17th year. I'm forgetting the exact number off the top of my head. 16, thank you. And this is how it ended. And I don't think that he was like Sacramento. I don't think I'm breaking anything here. The Sacramento wasn't his number one option this offseason. And I don't think that DeMar was Sacramento's number one option either. It took a while into the free agency process for that all to happen.
We were at the California Classic.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And he showed up to the game actually in the Joker shirt. Yeah, I think it's just hard to imagine for a guy that is in the twilight of his career and really trying to make noise in the postseason. And can any of us confidently? The question is, do you think the Kings can compete next year? I think is what is really going on here. And can DeMar be pitched on that idea before we reach the point where he may or may not ask out? And I think that it's very unlikely.
We do pocket watch on this show in different capacities. Right. So let me ask you this question, Chris. Do you think, and I'm not pocket watching because I'm trying to get paid too, but do you think that DeMar, we don't know, we know like the Lakers never actually offered him. We don't really know what else was out there, but do you think DeMar maybe regrets taking the extra, $5 million, whatever it is, and now that he probably wants to be moved, DeMar at 19 mil might be a much easier trade than DeMar at 24, 25 mil.
Sure. Yeah. To directly quote DeMar DeRozan, he has no regrets. He doesn't regret anything. But I also saw someone on Twitter say, me when I absolutely regret something. So, I think that there's probably
it's a mindset thing, right? It's not meant to be literal.
Yeah. It's more of like, am I going to sit in my house and think about the wrong decision I made? No, but like, is am I aware of the reality of what you maybe just listed out? Like, yeah, I mean, it probably makes it more. I don't even, whatever, just speaking totally freely, like maybe if he wanted to go to the Lakers or something, it would be easier for the Lakers to make a $19 million salary work, like you said, than a $25 million salary. And maybe it opens up even more teams. Maybe somehow the Celtics can, they seem to find money every day.
Right.
So
if you're going to ring, he just felt like he didn't ring Chase properly.
maybe, yeah. I mean, signing a 3-year deal was definitely an interesting decision for that aspect specifically. But if I had to guess, like he and his agent are going to do a lot of work to try and figure out, if not a better team, like, I mean, to be candid, like probably a better lifestyle, right? Like a better, like a Miami. Like I'm sure I could see DeMar DeRozan going to a Miami situation where, yeah, maybe they're still fighting for the play-in as well, and we can keep on the DeRozan play-in jokes, but he's more of a, like Brenden outlined, like he's helping Davion Mitchell, he's helping Tyler Hero, he's helping the younger guys, and frankly, that team could use some scoring. I just more so am saying I think DeMar more than likely is going to look for a contending team, and like he said during his press conference, he said specifically, I don't have 4 to 5 more years. I don't see myself playing 4 to 5 years from now, which tells me 2 to 3 max, and that is trying to maximize your window like no other.
I also think it's a mutual thing. I think it is
100%.
in the Kings' best
100%.
interest to move on from DeMar. Like
I
thought
right?
the pick, the pick was the signing was a little bit questionable fit wise at the time, and that very much proved to play out in hindsight. So I think it's a mutual best decision to move on.
Are we thinking like, the names that were still floated around at the trade at like DeMar 25 mil, like that's kind of a John Collins range. That's kind of, we'll see how the playoffs play out, but like that's kind of a Kyle Kuzma range. Not that I'm advocating for that, but that's kind of, if we're trying to think of, people are always, it says with Zach, it said with DeMar, it said with Domas, like, oh, what's their trade value? Who's going to want to, what? Oh, you're just going to get Julian Strother and some 2nd round picks. Like I do think that there's, now it might be same crap, different toilet, but like it is, you can still get somebody who is talented. It just may also still be an unwanted piece somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's a factor here. And I still think they're going to go like big fish hunting for one of these guards, or maybe in the Zion conversation, like Trae Young, LaMelo, Ja,
Right.
whatever it may be. And how they may feel about DeMar is questionable, but there's also an aspect of, hey, you need a matching salary. And if you're doing one of those deals, you're going to have to include draft picks no matter. So
Gotta
I
sell
think,
tickets too.
yeah, it may be one of those
guys.
conversations. It's hard to figure out like win-win trades where DeMar makes sense. But I think that we're likely talking about a scenario where if you are getting something better back, you're including draft capital.
Guys, I got something here.
Do you?
Oh boy.
Now, technically, I'm off by about $1 million.
Okay,
But
who cares?
we could figure that out.
Sure.
Am I crazy?
Yes.
You didn't hear anything we said.
When no. I
I was just in the lab.
No one's
He was.
I started cooking. Hold on.
That was a no, by the way.
Once Brenden said Chris, you said they need.
See, you don't even know.
No,
They need scoring. Okay. He gets to.
Oh my God.
It is what they say, the Taj Mahal practice facility.
Orlando, yeah.
He goes
Play
to
the song.
Orlando.
Okay.
We got to figure it out. It's off by 1.7 right now.
Okay.
DeMar DeRozan to the Magic for Jonathan Isaac and Anthony Black.
I would say that the Magic probably would try it. They probably wouldn't see the return on that. Like I more so think that they're pretty high on Anthony Black.
Okay.
I know Jonathan
you get that
Isaac
point
as
guard.
well,
You got
just,
the.
yeah,
You got
What
the
if you make it
size.
Howard?
Jet Howard.
Jet Howard.
They would probably be more likely to do that. I don't know how much. I know his rookie year he barely played at all.
Your boy De Silva over there too.
But
But
I
I mean,
like him too much.
Orlando doesn't seem like a DeMar fit at all in my mind.
Really?
They need shooting.
Yeah, he shoots.
No,
He sure does.
with a foot on the line.
Yeah.
With a foot on the
Him and
line.
Paolo Banchero together are hitting all of the mid-range.
In the
shots.
heat, in
Or
the
taking
heat,
all of
your feet shrink in the heat.
That is true. Yeah.
So he's missing the
Right.
line.
That's
That
right.
is insane
He's missing
logic.
the line
Maybe
now.
if he tied his shoes.
That's
like,
right.
It might
True.
like, give you an extra.
That's right.
couple
So
centimeters.
you never know, guys. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Happy Friday, Brenden and Chris. We will talk to you next week.
Thank you.
And by that time, I mean, that's a whole 7 days. I mean, I don't know what I'm not going to get in trouble here. I don't know what's going to happen the next time we talk, but
we'll probably have a coach at that point.
yes,
right?
that's a great call.
Official general manager.
Real quick, thoughts on Scott Perry? We saw Draymond Green. Everybody's very high on it. Not maybe the process to get Scott Perry, but everybody is really high on this hire.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the same thing, that people do really like Scott Perry. I do roll my eyes a little bit at people being like, oh, he brought, like, he did something during his 3 months in Sacramento when he signed Zach Randolph, George Hill, and I'm forgetting who else. And it's Vince Carter. And sure, there was an aspect of those dudes maybe wouldn't have considered coming to Sacramento at the time, but in hindsight, those don't look like the greatest moves. And he got hired by New York 3 months after that and got like credit for that. And so I think that stuff's questionable. Now different draft guys will actually come in the building and work out for us. I think Monte and Wes already had that for what it's worth. So it means something that everybody likes Scott Perry. I'll roll my eyes at the Draymond thing because I think it's just ironic that the Warriors guy is talking about the Kings like this, obviously with their history, but it means something when these guys are saying all this stuff. So I'm hopeful. But like you mentioned, the process is kind of what concerns me here, and we'll see.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of like Brenden said, I like that everybody seems to like him. The fact that Draymond's talking about him clearly says that, even around the league, he's just generally well connected, which I think is maybe the point of like the George Hill and, Zebo thing is that, and the draft thing is that he just knows everybody and everything. I'm a little, I haven't really heard much to Brendan's point, I guess, about like talent evaluation. We don't really know how he thinks in terms of that. And I think that's obviously a huge part of being a GM. And I think we'll just have to see. I'm not willing to say anybody's going to be the savior of this thing, but he does seem to have a really good rap of getting things to a professional level, right? Like getting things to the point where they're not a laughing stock. And, I think that would be very welcomed at this point.
Last thing I'll say super quick is that I think that when a new GM comes in, that ownership does let them cook for a sec, and that there's value in that.
There's
about the
danger
second
in that as well. Also,
there is, but I think the first year or two, they let him cook a little, and we'll actually see what Scott Perry wants. It's just, is he going to remain, the lead decision?
Really quick to wrap that up as well. I do think that it makes me nervous because, how much of this is Scott Perry is a Vivek guy, and we're just enabling. Like now this is hiring Vlade without hiring Vlade, right? That is my fear with the Scott Perry thing, is that it's just a little bit too cohesive, and maybe maybe you do get better alignment, but is that alignment for good?
Real quick.
Anything else? You want to wrap up that wrap up?
I agree. If we want me to drop one more bomb, I think there should be 3 microphones when Scott Perry gets introduced, assuming that Doug Christie is sitting next to him. I think that Vivek Ranadive needs to address everything that's happened here, because clearly his hands are all over
Or
this.
maybe have your own press conference, because
that would be the most ideal
the problem
thing.
with him doing that would be
we're all talking
the other
to Vivek.
2 aren't getting any questions because man needs to answer some questions.
All right. Great stuff from the guys. They cooked for the last hour. And when we return, G-Man cooks. He gives a beautiful perspective on the 2024-2025 season. He did that at the end